you feel so isolated and alone. And it's like, oh, no, you don't have to be. Like, we're here, unfortunately, as like the club that nobody wants to join, but we're here to hold your hand and we're here to support you.
In 2013, Kat Bonner lost her mom in a tragic car accident. She figured out how to manage her grief and is helping other women do the same. On this podcast, you'll hear from other women who have lost their moms and discover the exact coping strategies you need to get through the day and be in the best place you've ever been. Don't miss another episode. Subscribe today. More information can be found at katbonner.com/podcast. And if you'd like to join a group of like-minded women, head to Facebook and search for the Life After Losing Mom community. Lastly, if you're looking for help managing your grief, book a complimentary connection call at katbonner.com.
Well, I would say ever since I learned about death when I was I want to say I was about 6 or 7 years old when I first understood death as a concept. And I remember, I think it might have been around the context of losing my grandfather. And, kind of really trying to understand that and wrap my brain around what that meant for him to be dead. And then making that leap immediately to being like, oh, that means someday mom's going to die. And I remember just being very anxious about that for a large part of my childhood and trying not to focus on it too much because there wasn't really going to do too good, but definitely remembering that idea of and it was my sole thing was on my mom. I mean, I loved my brother, I loved my father, but it never occurred to me that, well, first of all, it never occurred to me that I'd lose my brother, and as you know, I lost him first, and it never really occurred to me that I'd lose my dad, and for me, it was always focused on my mom because I was such a little mommy's girl from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's hard when, you're confronted with death and you know what it is, but that still doesn't, make anything easier because no matter what, you still can't prepare yourself for the death of your mom, even though eventually hey, this is probably going to happen while I'm alive. And
right.
Yeah. So that's just interesting. So let's see, you were a mama's girl. Where was your brother, close to your mom as well? Or just tell me a little bit more about the dynamic of your relationship with her.
Sure. Well, a little bit of a side backstory or pre-story because I'm adopted, so is my brother. As far as we know, we were never blood related, but we're both adopted from Bogota, Colombia. And my parents, my mom really always wanted to be a mother. Ever since she was a young girl, she was like, I want to be a mother someday. And she and my dad were trying to get pregnant for a while, had to go through fertility treatments and all that. They finally did get pregnant, and then my mom went into premature labor and lost the baby. He lived for a day. At 6 months, she was only pregnant for 6 months. And then he was born and lived for a day and died. And then the doctors had told them at the time that it really wouldn't be a good idea for my mom's body or the baby that she was going to try to carry to get pregnant again. So at that point, the doctor was like, if you really want to be parents someday, you should probably look into another method like adoption. So my mom was like, well, that's it. Well, I need to be a mother. So this is how we're going to become parents. So my brother was adopted first. And then, and I think secretly, although it was never outright said, but I think secretly my mom really wanted to have a daughter, which I understand. So she did after my brother was about 3.5 years old, they adopted me. and it was all over at that point. Like, again, it was never stated like, oh, Kimmy, you're my favorite. Like, but I think, especially standing as an adult and standing like from a different perspective and looking back on my childhood, I can kind of see like out of that I was my favorite for my mom. Although she loved my brother, but they had a very clashing dynamic because they were both very stubborn and both very hot-headed, and wouldn't back down from each other. So they were constantly clashing. And I always wanted to be the people pleaser, especially wanted to be like the people pleaser for my mom, especially as I saw her like getting into these fights with my brother and everything. So I wanted to be like, oh, okay, like be mad at him, but don't be mad at me. Like I'll follow the rules and the directions, and like being like the quote unquote perfect daughter for her. Because I never wanted her to be mad with me, and I always wanted her approval with everything I did. And so, and because of that, I think we became very close because I was always more or less always following her directions and doing what she told me to do within reason. So we were really close, and we bonded over the love of reading and theater and traveling places. Even at a young age, she would bring me places, and we just always had a really, really close connection, more so than I think. I think my brother and her did achieve some sort of connection after he got through his teenage years, but it was never, I don't think, as close as my mom and I.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Yeah, I love hearing about the dynamic just of like your mom's relationship. You're in your mom's relationship.
Sure.
You're the first person that I've had on the show that's adopted. So I'm like, wow, like they're
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like they're closer to their mom, and and I'm like, shoot, like I mean, everybody that like I've had on the show is like decently close to their mom.
Sure.
But I was just like, okay, like wow, this is great. You have a great relationship. But I mean, it just goes to show that obviously blood doesn't make family. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
but obviously no one really asked me about that. So when I guess did you realize like because I know that your son was born after your mom passed, and you lost your brother before your mom, but do you think like the struggle and like your lack of hope came from like losing your brother first and then your mom, or was it just like you lost your mom and it was like, oh my God, my world is like tumbling down? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, losing my brother was unexpected, and he was riding home on his bicycle in Brooklyn, tried to go over a curb and judged it, hit his head on the curb. That knocked him unconscious, and then he unfortunately was ran over by a truck. Or they never caught the person that ultimately killed him. And that was it completely blindsided all of us. I mean, because it wasn't something that we ever expected to happen. And when I had thought about death all the way leading up into that moment, in November 18th, 2013, it was always mom is gonna die first. My mom was always sick, and she had rheumatoid arthritis. We knew that she was going to have to go for a aortic heart valve replacement. In fact, when my mom and my dad separated late. They were married for 42 years, and then just decided, yeah, we're done. So
fair enough.
Yeah, it's like really big empty nest syndrome because both my brother and I were out of the house by that point. So when my dad actually called me at work to give me the news about my brother, I was 29 years old at the time, and my brother my dad, I never had ever heard him cry, forever. Because he's one of those stoic, like, people that he's just, not really, he's emotional, but he doesn't really show emotional. He's a great guy. I love my dad, but he's just a man. So when I picked up the phone, cause like the secretary came into the room, my classroom, and I only had a couple students at the time. It was like a before school program. And she came in, she's like, Kim, you need to go into the main office. Your dad's on the phone. And I was like, that's so weird. Okay. Like, it's 8:30 in the morning. Why is my dad calling me? Okay. So I like went into the main office, and the main office was cleared, which should have been my first indication. And I picked up the phone, and I hear my dad, but he's crying, which was like, whoa, like, what is happening? Like, I've never heard this before. And my immediate reaction was, I knew someone died, but I was like, okay, mom died. And I was like bracing myself, and I was like, and in the back of my head, I was like, wow, I'm surprised Dad's upset. Cause like, they got divorced, and my dad was remarried, but it's like, okay, they've been married for 42 years. There's history there, but I was still surprised that he was crying over the death of my mom, because he was really struggling, of course, with delivering the news. So I had all this time to like think about this, build this story in my head that like, okay, mom's dead. And then he finally was able to get out the words that it was Christopher, my brother, who died. And so that was just like, what? And I screamed, like, because I had two friends that at the time that were working as teachers, because they had texted me and they were like, are you okay? We just heard you scream. I don't even remember screaming. Like, I don't remember any of that, especially just because it was just so unexpected. So then once my brother died, I was trying to rebuild my life and kind of figure out what this was, what grief is, and everything. And I was starting to get a little of a foothold on everything. And then 15 months later, I got another phone call that woke me up in the morning. This time it was from my mom's assisted care living place that she was living at, to tell me that she had died in her sleep. And I would say, because I was in the second year of losing my brother, and then I felt like reset button on everything, and was then plunged into first year grief of losing my mom. I just lost all hope at that point. And I honestly would just get drunk every single night, because I could not handle living in this world without two of my like favorite people in the world, my two biggest cheerleaders. Like, it just was like, okay, like this is absolutely ridiculous. And if I'm sitting here sober, I'm like, I would just sit there and cry and cry and cry. So then I would just turn to drinking, because it was like an easy outlet of like, I need to escape from this actual reality of losing these two people. So yeah.
Bless your heart. Yeah. And when I think about, I guess losses before, our mom, it's like, okay, if we have our mom to go through this, then it's okay. And then when you have a loss and you have your mom, and then you lose your mom, and you're like, oh my God, like, I don't have this person that I lost before my mom, and now I don't have my mom. And like, I mean, yeah, you and your dad can be close, but there's just so many things that,
Absolutely.
There's so many things that like, okay, like, this is only good for my mom. What the heck?
Oh yeah. Well, my dad, bless him, but he, I would say this is probably about 3 weeks after I lost my mom. And I, was just obviously sitting there crying all the time, and like not being able to breathe and everything. And he sat me down, and he was like, are you going to stop crying? And I was like, no, not anytime soon. Like, you do realize I lost my brother, and now I lost my mom. Like, not crying is not an option right now.
Wait, who said that?
Yeah.
That was your dad?
Yeah.
Oh, bless him. I would have been like, you lost your kid. Like, oh, when are you going to stop crying?
I know. Well, and that's the thing. Like, so, I mean, men and women, obviously, we process and deal with grief completely different as we do with a lot of things in life. And I know, obviously, it was so hard that he lost my brother. But after the initial first few months, I haven't seen him cry since. So he was like, because he kind of like was like, okay, like processing it, however he processes it, is that he has an amazing new wife. I love my stepmom, and I think she helps him deal with a lot of his grief. But for me, like, and like when he was saying that, like, you gotta pull it together and stop crying. Like 3 weeks after my mom died, I was like, ugh, if mom was here, she would like be like, are you serious? Like, and I think my stepmom, I think, overheard or whatever, and she came in and she was like, Rob, no. Like, let her cry. Like,
Thank
she needs
goodness
this.
there was some woman who was a reason around here. Holy
Right.
Your stepmom. Wow, you never mentioned that. So was she? I'm just curious. Was she married to your dad before your mom passed?
Yes. She. It's actually, they have a really adorable story. My stepmom and my dad dated in their like early 20s. Then broke up. They both claim they don't remember why they broke up, but they broke up and had families, had lives, had children, and then like 45 years later, found each other through Facebook and reconnected. And my parents were in the process of getting separated when they reconnected. And then they kind of just picked up where they left off 45 years earlier. And she's a gem. She is absolutely amazing and has helped like the whole family kind of stay together through the loss. And she's actually even integrated my mother's side of the family into our family. So we have holidays together, and my aunt who lives up here, who's my mom's youngest sister, Edie, she's always over there at my dad and stepmom's house for Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, like all of that. And it's like I owe that a lot to my stepmother, just being so open and loving, and such a strong woman to be like, you know what, you might be my husband's ex-wife's family, but we're all family, and here are my open arms for you. So she's amazing.
Good. That makes me so happy. It's always good to have another woman, in your life, or
oh yeah,
regardless of whose life it is.
Sure.
Yeah, that's important. So okay, cool. So I'm trying to process. So she was married to your dad when your mom passed. Did you live in like the same city that your mom did, or?
No. So I live in the New York City area in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was living there when she passed. So like feels like such a long time ago. And she was living out on Long Island. So she had moved from her big house that she had shared with my dad. She had moved out of the house and into an assisted living unit about 4 months before her death, because she had like a house of like 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. Like she didn't need all of that. And it was hard to upkeep and everything. So as a family, we were all like, why don't you move a little bit closer to Queens, so you're not so far away from me, and I can visit you a little bit easier, because where she was living, it was about a 2-hour drive for me. And then when she moved, it was probably about 45 minutes. So, and it was nice. I mean, I wish she had, spent longer time there for many reasons. Obviously, if she was still alive, it'd be great. It's not that bad of a drive. So, but it's
Dang, not bad of a drive. Shoot.
Yeah.
New York City. That sounds super daunting, but
I love New York City. It's my favorite place. Like, I moved out to Long Island for about 2 years there when I had my son, and I was like, nope, we have to go back. I hate it out here. So now we're back here in Astoria.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of things to do for sure.
Yes.
So how long would you say, because you lost your brother about 2 years before you lost your mom. So how old were you when your mom passed by chance?
I was 30.
30. Okay. So old enough, I guess, to understand, what was happening. It still sucked, but
unwillingly understanding what's happening, but yes.
Were you already pregnant by chance?
No, I was not.
Okay, you were not. Cool.
No. So I was, but my mom, so when my mom passed, I had a serious boyfriend at the time. To the point where she's like, okay, so when are you guys getting engaged and getting married and having kids? I want to be a grandma. Like, it was always like, this was even before my brother passed. She was like, I want to be a grandma. I want to be grandma. I want to be grandma. Like, you and your boyfriend seem like you're serious about each other. So, I mean, my boyfriend and I were living together. So she's like, okay, like, tick, 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 tock, tick, tock. Like, hello, when are you giving me my grandkid? And then after my brother passed, she was even more like, okay, like, what would be really helpful around here? A baby. But unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be with my boyfriend at the time and everything. And we wound up breaking up only 5 months before my mom passed. So my mom missed out on being grandma by about 2 years.
Okay, that's fair. But I mean, at least she knew that like the thought was like in your head. So she kind of had a possibility to look forward to. How long after your mom passed would you say that like your struggles really started? Like, was it immediate? Did it take you a while to process like what had happened?
Yeah, it was immediate because it was just like, so actually January of 2015, I was on vacation seeing my favorite band in Mexico. They were playing on the beach, and I was feeling at peace. So I was like, you know what? Like, they have a song called "With You in Your Dreams." The band is Hanson, and they had this song all about like, they wrote it for their grandma after their grandmother had passed, and it's about loving the ones that passed and how they're still with you in your heart, in your dreams. And it's a beautiful song. And they had played that on the beach during their concert. And I remember just feeling really at peace and being like, okay, like, my brother passed. It's been a year and 2 months at this point, but I'm going to be okay. And I will be able to make it through everything. And then, like, literally a month later from that time, my mom died. And I was like, oh, F that. Like, I'm done. And just kind of was like, that's when I started, like, I would say, so my mom died on February 8th. We buried her on February 14th, which was Valentine's Day. Was my mom always made so special for us. Like, we were always her Valentines, and she'd always, like, just be really cute about holidays and everything. So burying her on that day was just ridiculous. And then I came back to the city, I would say the day after. And then after that, I was just pretty much drunk for like a month straight. And I knew I couldn't like continue that because like I was also in grad school and I had to become a librarian. But like luckily all those people, like all my professors were really understanding because like they knew my story that I lost my brother, and like that's actually losing my brother is what pushed me into this round of grad school to become a librarian. And then I was like, I just lost my mother. Like, I can't produce anything, any kind of work. Like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I don't know what day it is. I don't know who I am. Like, I will catch up on my work or I'll go on like leave or whatever. I just know that I can't do any of this work right now. And they were so understanding and let me catch up in my own time. So then that whole month, like, it was just drinking. And then I was in therapy, though. I mean, I was in grief therapy for when I lost my brother, and I just love my therapist. She's amazing. So I continued with that. And I'm like, and then when my mom died, obviously I stayed in therapy, and she would see me a few hours that I would be sober a day, and she would be like, "Hey, like, you can't just always get drunk every day." And then I would say like about a month into after I lost my mom, I was like, okay, like, right, this is permanent. I While for a few weeks there, I would have loved to join my brother and my mom. I also knew that I didn't want to do that to my dad more than anything, because I'm like, he doesn't need to lose, because at that point that would have been 3 kids, since he also lost his baby Clinton, and from when he was younger. And then losing my brother, and he lost me too. I was just like, he can't do that to him. So I was actually away, because I feel like traveling for me is huge for my grief. That's something that has really helped me with hope, giving me hope and everything. So that month anniversary of losing my mom on March 8th, I was away visiting a friend in Massachusetts. And something clicked in my mind of like, okay, when I come back to the city, like, I have to stop drinking every single night and drinking myself to oblivion, and start trying to rebuild, because I did it after Christopher passed. And I know I need to do this again for my mom's memory. And I know that, my mom would want me to continue my life and to be a mom. Like, that's something I always wanted. And, although she's not here, like, I still want her to be able to have that grandmother status. So I kind of started rebuilding from that point, after that first month of just being like blackout drunk.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Trust me, you're not the only one who's done that. So bless your heart. I am glad that you learned, because that's definitely not the answer. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah, I think after a while, like, after you lose so many people, you're just like, fuck this. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, not saying like, what do I have to live for? Because that's like a pretty negative thought, but it's like, all right, like, it's pretty easy to lose hope when you keep losing people. It's like, all right, what hope do I have that nobody else is going, like, or what hope do I have left that I'm not going to lose somebody else? You just become kind of immune to it. And I think that, I mean, you're definitely not the only person that has struggled with that. So like, after you lost your mom, that's when you realized, you were like, all right, like, was it more of like hopelessness or helplessness? Or maybe both?
Good question. Yeah, probably both, but I would say a little bit more of hopelessness of, like, how, because I feel like my mom and I talked every day, and like, she helped me out with all the little problems and the big problems. So it's like, when the little things came up of, I don't know, just like, oh, I need to, like, oh, how long do I put the salmon in the oven for? Like, couldn't call her. And I'm like, oh my God, like, like stuff like that. And then like, even like, and then the bigger things too, like, it's just everything. Like, I just wanted to call her about everything. And it's just so hard to not have that person to be there for me. And, but then, I don't know. Then I just feel like, well, I had started doing a lot of yoga, around that time. And a lot of my friends, and family obviously knew that I took, that I was just completely knocked off my feet with both of those deaths within 15 months of each other. So there was a lot of people there that were just there for me, encouraging me, listening to my stories, listening to me just cry. Like, like, I feel like it was a lot of, in when, like, if a friend loses somebody, like, as a friend, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm here for you, but I don't know what to say. And it's like, you don't need to say anything. Just
yes,
like,
girl, preach it.
In silence. Yeah. Like, just sit with me and let me cry. Like, because there's nothing that you can say that will bring my brother or my mother back. Like, there's literally nothing that you can say. That's all I want. so besides that, just sit with me and like, don't be scared of me being upset. And luckily I had a lot of amazing friends that were able to do that for me. And family and my therapist. I love my therapist. And I also, so for the sibling, the loss of the sibling, there's a group called Compassionate Friends. And they have chapters all over the world for parents who've lost their children, but they also have chapters of siblings who lost their siblings. And it's this whole big grief support group. And since I was already doing that for about a year and some change, I met a lot of wonderful people there that unfortunately have also lost their siblings. So then when I then got the reset button and lost my mom, they were huge, like components in giving me hope, because they were just there and they're like, hey, we might not have lost our parents, but we've lost somebody, so we're here for you. And there were some people that had multiple losses and that were like, we get it, like this multiple loss thing is complete shit, like, but we're here for you. And with that group, it's especially being able to find laughter in just the fucked upness of the whole situations really helped. Kind of helped me rebuild the life that I just was like, I don't know how to rebuild this, but at least I have you guys.
Exactly. Laughter. Oh my God. When people say laughter is the best medicine, I'm like, yeah, I can 100% agree with that.
Right.
And I loved that you did yoga. Like literally yoga was, I swear to God, that's the only way that I was able to heal at that point.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Well, I'm also like super type A in the sense that like, okay, like I'm a very wound up kind of person anyways. So I was never really able to control my emotions. Sure. And then that was very much so like stepping out of your comfort zone, because it's scary for a lot of people. They don't realize like, oh my God, like I have to be like calm. Like, how can I focus? And you're like, okay, like right. Being able to literally clear your mind and not think about anything is like, oh my God. But yeah, I love how you were like saying the difference between helplessness and helpless and hopelessness. Sorry, sure. My verbiage. Because that's definitely, there's a huge difference, obviously. That's right. Important to point out. And it's like, I definitely like wouldn't think you were helpless since you were, already getting help. You already kind of knew your coping strategies, but sure, it was just like another thing to cope and grieve. And that's where, the hopelessness came in and the struggle with hope, because I mean, a mom is a girl's best friend. And, if you lose your brother, you have your mom, and then you lose your mom, and it's like, all right, like, what am I going to do now, kids?
Right.
But yeah, I love that you mentioned too, like about that support group. It's always better, I think, at least to meet face to face, if you can, because, well, I feel like too, like maybe when like people first lose a sibling or a parent or have a significant loss, they feel so alone. And then when you talk to people, you're like, oh my God. Like when I first started this podcast and that sort of thing, I was like, oh, like there's not going to be, that many people that have lost a mom who can relate to this. And my mind is blown. Like, I mean, there's already a ton of people in the world, but like, sure, I guess just not really having a huge friend group, that, not saying I don't have a support system, but like if you don't know a ton of people that have gone through this, like a similar loss, then I mean, you just don't realize how many people out there like have been through what you've been through or something very similar. Like you're like, okay, like those are the people that I find myself, turning to when I'm really, really struggling, because like you have friends, but like, like you said, they don't know what to say or do. And especially if I want advice, like if I just want somebody to listen, that's great. Like my friends can listen, but like, if you want advice, your grief or anything or help, then I feel like that's when you would turn to, that support system. Have you noticed yourself like doing that too, or is that just me?
Oh no, I absolutely agree. 100%. I mean, I feel like I constantly turn to the support groups that I have found. I So there's also like so within Compassionate Friends, there's also an online Facebook group as well. And I just feel like because it is like you said, it's so reassuring to know that you're not alone. So even if it's not like I necessarily need advice or help or anything on a situation, but just to be like, like on I don't know, like on this one's for because I found that the sibling groups have just been a little bit more helpful, and I just don't know if it's just because that's how it came in my life. Was like I lost my brother, that I lost my mother, and I'm sure there's wonderful support groups online for that as well. But since I like kind of found my group of grief people, I do tend to go to the sibling group. But during National Siblings Day, which is like I think April 9th every year.
I was like, is that a real thing?
Yeah, it's a real thing. And it's actually like the history of it is it was started by a bereaved sibling as a way to honor her sibling. But if you log on to Facebook on that day, everybody is posting their pictures of their siblings and how much they love their siblings and like everything, like of just being like, oh, like siblings, yay. And for those that have lost their sibling, that day is such a huge trigger. So it's like just to go on to the sibling group and be able to vent and be like, oh my God, like I can't look at everybody's posts today without like crying because my sibling isn't here. Or when friends like not meaning to, and they shouldn't have to restrict themselves, like complain about their sibling or their mothers actually.
Oh my God.
Like, and then they complain to you. And I have some friends that are aware. They're like, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be complaining to you about my brother or my mom because you lost yours. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Like I don't want to restrict you and not have you like complain about that because they're humans. Like, I get it. Like, you're not always going to get along with your mom, and it's fine. Like, I want you to be able to be with me, and be open with me. But it's also nice to have a group to fall back on and be like, oh man, like I wish those were my complaints. I wish I could complain about my mom right now for X, Y, or Z reason. But
yeah, social media is interesting. I don't really have any words for it. It's great if it's used like correctly, but for some people, I'm just like, oh my God, like social media is literally gonna end this world. I swear to God, it will. But yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, if it's Mother's Day and you've lost your mom, Father's Day and you've lost your dad, Siblings Day and you've lost a sibling, do not get on social media.
Sure. Yeah. Like, if it's going to be hard for you and you can't like deal with it,
I mean, obviously you're going to see these pictures. Like, that's life. So remove yourself from the situation. Like, that's just, I mean, I think that's personally common sense, but once again, whatever. But no one asked me. But yeah, and that's why I try to like, and I mean, people are going to post pictures about their mom, whatever, that's fine. But like, especially I noticed after I lost my mom, like I don't post things about like, I'm like, oh, I have the best brother. Like I have the best dad. Like I don't post those kinds of things because I know how it affects other people.
That's a great self-awareness of that.
Yeah. And I've talked more about like, and I don't really even like post about my mom's passing, my grandma's passing like that much. But like when I feel compelled to, I do, because it's more important to talk about death, than it is to talk about life. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Like, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but like, those are things that people don't talk about. So why not talk about it? I mean,
sure. I 100% agree, because I feel like as a society, we just don't talk enough about it. And everybody loses somebody. And then when you do lose somebody that's like one of your core people, it's that you feel so isolated and alone. And it's like, oh, no, you don't have to be. Like, we're here, unfortunately, as like the club that nobody wants to join, but we're here to hold your hand, and we're here to support you and get through all this shit that's like, that just sucks. It just sucks to not have, your mom to support you, but
especially if y'all are close too. But I mean, it's life. So
what's that?
I was like, especially if you and your mom are close, it really sucks.
Yes.
But I mean, it's life. And like when people realize, like people who like don't talk about death or aren't really confronted with death, the first time they lose somebody, they're like, what the fuck? Like, what am I going to do? And then they talk to other people and they're like, wow, there's people in this world that have lost their mom or that have lost their sibling, that have lost a child. And I'm like, yeah, what do you live under a rock? Like, I mean,
yeah.
but it's sad. Like, that's just the way that society is. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about that. But would you say, like, the thing that helped you the most with feeling hopeless was the support group? Or, like, what was the catalyst that, helped you?
Yeah, I do think it's like the human connection and connecting with others that that have been through it, that have walked through it. Because then, I remember early in my grief, with my brother in particular, looking at people who are like further along in their grief and being like, okay, they made it through. They made it through the first anniversary. They made it through their loved one's first birthday without them, the first Christmas, the first, all those first.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the first year.
And
you make it through that, you're
like,
golden.
Okay, what's that?
You make it through that and you're golden.
Yeah, yeah. And just, I remember looking at them and being like, they did it, I can too. And kind of just almost using them as like a grief role model of some sort. And that was able to kind of like push me up and like, okay. And I feel like now, I'm 5.5 years from losing my brother and 4 years from losing my mom. And I feel like, I'm a lot further along in my grief than I was obviously like the first few weeks of losing both of them. And I would hope that someone could, benefit from hearing my story and feeling like kind of that same gut feeling that I felt in my early grief. Like, okay, wait, she did it too. She picked herself up and was able to move past all this shit and everything. And now, is obviously always missing my mom and my brother, but I've been able to put together a happy life, and I'm able to smile and laugh and enjoy life despite that. Which is, I know I think we touched upon this a little bit, but but I'm working on my memoir partly because like I want to have, because for me, books, I mean, even before I had lost people, books have been my like number one love. And and whenever I have like hard things that happen to me, I usually run to books and try to find books that can help me get through stuff. So when my parents got divorced, I like went on Amazon and bought all the books for adults who are dealing with their parental divorce. P.S. There's not a lot of out there, but there are some books out there. And excuse me, when always dealing with adoption stuff, like same thing. Like I read probably like every book out there is about being adopted. And then when I went through the reunion, same thing. Like, because I've been reunited with my birth family, I read a lot of books on adoptees who have been reunited with their birth families, and always felt like, wow, this is so helpful. So I did that obviously with the loss of my brother, and found all the books about dealing with sibling loss of my mother, found all the books and read them. And that gave me a lot of hope too, because like in those books, there's so much content of other people that have gone through the same thing and everything. So I feel like I'm like, I kind of want to add my voice to that for other readers out there that devour books and use books as a form of therapy, and as a form of healing.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love how books become very comforting, in that sort of regard. It's just kind of like an escape. Like you can like just sit there and read. At least that's how, I looked at it. Yeah. Well, I love that you were able to. Hopelessness is definitely I mean, a feat, grief in general is, but that is like a very strange feeling. You're like, okay, I've literally never felt this way until now. So
Mm-hmm.
now what? Um,
Right.
what would you say? Or actually, I take that back. What would you like? What advice would you give to someone, who is struggling with this?
Um, well, honestly, like to not give up hope, even when you want to. Um, that it it sucks, absolutely. Like there's no way to deny that losing somebody that you love, losing your mother, like I mean, honestly, even if you didn't have a close relationship with your mom, it's still like that sucks at a different level because then it's just like, there's regret, and wondering what could have been if there was more of if you guys did have a relationship or time to reconcile or whatever the case may be. Um, so there's no way around the fact that it just totally sucks. But that there's hope. You can smile again. You can laugh again. You can live again, and just lean on other people. Like we are a society of, we like to make connections. We like to talk, and we like to share stories. And everybody has a story like worth sharing. And just kind of find your grief tribe of some sort of other women or men who are in the same boat as you. And it just makes a humongous difference. And I feel like, I love that you were doing this podcast because I feel like even if they can't necessarily connect with somebody in person in their community, that there's, podcasts like this that people can listen to and just not feel so alone, because you're not. Like that's a huge part of the advice that I feel like I heard early on, is you're not alone, and you really aren't. You have a lot of people that are here for you.
Yeah, it's important to know too, like, especially if somebody lives in like a rural town or something like that, and like books are great, but like if they're not for them, because you have to be very in tune, like when you're reading a book,
Sure.
and you have to like focus on it, and sometimes obviously focusing on the content that is,
Right.
related to your loss isn't always the easiest thing. So
Sure.
yeah, thank you for the encouragement. I appreciate that. And I know a lot of times, like, there are the support groups and stuff like that on Facebook, but sometimes those things, not saying they aren't monitored, but sometimes it can be filled with a lot of like negative self-talk with,
Sure.
the members, and that might not be very encouraging for other people. So I made it a point, like, like there's not going to be any negative self-talk on here. Like it's all going to be inspiring. Like, how did you cope with the struggle, that sort of thing. So it's like, it's literally only giving people hope.
Right.
Yeah, at least that's the goal. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to leave listeners? I know that we kind of like touched on that briefly about, any advice that you would give them. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean,
Just know you're not alone.
yeah, you're not alone. And if you can travel, like, I don't know, that was a humongous hope, like, thing that filled me with hope as well.
Oh yeah.
Especially
even
during
being
park.
outside, like nature too.
Yeah.
Does that help you? I love that. Like going on a nature walk. Like if you can't travel, like go like see the world. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, even go walking in the woods is
yeah.
seeing part of a different part of the world. So I feel like
Was your mom cremated by chance? Or because was your mom cremated by chance? Because I noticed that like my mom was, and I guess that's why I feel so close to her, like in nature. But maybe I'm just crazy. Oh no, that's right. You said you buried her.
Yeah, no, yeah, we buried her. So
but I mean, maybe it's just the world. It's like, okay, like, oh, like there's a sunset on a bad day. Like, hey, mom.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I don't know. I feel like my mom loved nature as well, so I feel like there's that also kind of helps me feel connected to her because of her love for nature. But yeah, I think like you said, even like going for a walk, or, if you can't travel necessarily, like getting out of your head is just like, like I go places on the on the hard anniversaries when I can, on like their birthdays or their death anniversaries.
Yes, girl.
I try to go do something and just something out of the norm, because it just helps to, like you said, just get out of your head and everything.
Yeah, especially if you're alone too. That's what I've noticed. That's actually, I literally decided this year, like on Mother's Day or my mom's anniversary, like if I can, just go somewhere I've never been. And then, oh my God, and I go by myself. I'll take my dog. But oh my God, I did not realize how helpful it was, especially if there's bad weather. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but you can't control the weather. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so glad to have you. Tell me, the listener, where can the listeners find like more of your writing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So right now, I am working on my first draft of my memoir. So super, super early stages. And I am documenting that on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is Writing Wednesdays. So that's
why Wednesdays.
Well, two reasons. One, I love alliteration. It's one of my favorite things.
Fair enough.
The second reason really is, I'm a single mom, and I have been able to, for the past, I would say 3 or 4 months, I've gotten a babysitter on Wednesdays, and that is my dedicated time to work on my memoir. So I wind up doing a lot of my writing on Wednesdays.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, that's where it comes from right now.
That is so funny. Well, yeah, it was so great to have you on. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much for having me. I so enjoyed it.
You're listening to Life After Losing Mom with me, Kat Bonner. On this podcast, you'll hear from other women who have lost their mom and discovered the exact coping strategies you need to get through the day and be in the best place you've ever been. Don't miss another episode of Life After Losing Mom. Subscribe today. More information can be found at katbonner.com/podcast. And if you'd like to join a group of like-minded women, head to Facebook and search for the Life After Losing Mom community /podcast to access previous episodes and subscribe for episodes in the future.
This has been an OutsourceYourPodcast.com production.